My next guest is going to be one that some of you might say, how do you make the list? Well, I'll tell you how he made the list. He is a fascinating human being, a brain that a lot of us would wish we had. And I know you're going to like the conversation. I'm looking forward to it. And so I just ask you to sit back, relax, and enjoy the conversation and have an open mind. His name is Derek Crager. I think you're going to like him. I want to thank InterraWorks, my sponsor. Thank you for being there from pretty much the middle of when I started this and your belief in what I do. Although we do celebrate successes in the same area, and that's taking care of leaders and helping leaders become better leaders. So again, thank you, InterraWorks. Hello, everyone. This is Greg Aden with a special guest today. His name is Derek Crager, like in Crager.
Viking Crager, yeah. Kind of like the wheels, spelled a little bit different. Kind of like Kroger, spelled a little different, not as much food.
It's like Greg. I should be able to say Greg and then just add the Gregor, but it's Crager with a
Well,
C.
it's funny you bring that up. I've been called Greg when they hear my name, Greg and Craig, just because it's phonetically it's familiar to people. But yeah, you
Yeah.
got it. You nailed it, Greg. Oh, good job.
Derek, I've got to ask, when you had nothing better to do and you and I were connecting, and I said, "Hey, do you want to be a guest on my servant leadership podcast?" What were your first thoughts?
Well, servant leadership, it's in the name. It's something that I feel close to, and I first heard the word or the phrase in the '90s. But as far as living it, I've seen it, people trying to mimic it, if that makes
Mm,
sense. But
yeah.
my last role at Amazon, I had I will testify, she was the best manager slash supervisor role model that Amazon ever had. And she just exemplified servant leadership. So that's the first thing that comes to my mind is Kim Chavez, who I worked for at Amazon during my time there.
I was going to say, let's give she a name, and you just did, Kim Chavez. What's Kim doing today? Is she still with Amazon? And do you guys stay in touch?
Well, unfortunately, she's no longer with us. After Amazon, she went over to Tesla, and then she passed away. About a year ago or so. Unfortunately,
I'm
she a
sorry.
couple of years my younger, but she was such a role model. I always looked up to her, despite similarity of age.
I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry for your loss, and I would have never guessed. So, wow. You said you first heard about servant leadership in the 90s. Robert Greenleaf created this way of being, way of leading, back in the early 70s, and he's the person that made it famous. And when I started studying what servant leadership means, and a lot of people call it service leadership, it's not, it's servant leadership. It is to serve others first and then lead them. And that's the whole premise. And the reason I adopted that, not only for my podcast, but for my how I run Aden Leadership is because as a dad, I believe it's important for us to serve our kids and then parent them. So why wouldn't it be important for us as human beings, bosses, no, leaders, yes, to serve first, then lead? And when I say that distinction, what do you hear? What do you believe leaders could be doing better relative to that realm?
It's a leader's job. And Jim McCullough made this. He was another Amazon person, but I worked for him for about 6 months. Jim McCullough brought it to my mind that leadership isn't about leading anything. To him, leadership was the ability to create more leaders, those that know the process, know what the value is, and when you're creating new leaders, they're typically working for you and then with you, and then
Mm.
hopefully they go on to do bigger and better things. And that's what I hear. If as far as the step stool or the step stone, but as far as the servant leadership itself, if we give employees, partners, everything that they need, servant leadership is not just in employee base; it's also out in the in civil, in towns and cities and etc. But if we give those people on the ground everything that they need to succeed, well, then that's our job. That's servant leadership. Our job isn't to micromanage. It's not
Mhm.
to judge. It's to hold accountable and make sure that if they need water, give them water. If they need paper, give them paper. And don't ask why sometimes, because just let them do what they're doing best.
Yeah. And you mentioned accountability, and one of my favorite things to say about accountability is if the person is holding themselves accountable, you really don't have to hold them accountable. And so how do we get that accountability to be easily recognized? And that's for the leader to behave that way. Because a lot of people will look at the leader and say, okay, he or she or they are doing that, and they're successful and they're kind and they're considerate and they have empathy. Maybe if I did that, I'd also become a great leader. Your words, not mine. Leadership is to create other leaders. So, how do we model leadership? And how do we make sure that when people are watching and when they're not watching, we're doing the right things? And it's not easy for human beings to be perfect. But I'd ask you that, have you met anyone, Craig, that is perfect? And if you did, who is that person?
Yeah, it's you or me or it's nobody, right?
Right.
It's yeah, the perfection is the North Star, of course. And when we give those that work for us the ability to choose their own North Star. I mean, let's get real. Let's make sure it's on board with what the team and what the project is, of course, but give them themselves the ability to uh, set their own milestones, set their own goals, and they will achieve them because now their word is on the line and they have something that's theirs that they own. If it's
Yep.
just showing up to do whatever Greg says tomorrow, well, you know what? They're not going to think about the project or
Mm-mm.
the job or whatever's going on until tomorrow because it's all tomorrow. But they own it when it's their goals.
Yeah. Before we get into what you're doing now, and I believe it's a beautiful topic. It's got a lot more acceptance today than it ever has. But tell us, how did you end up at Amazon, and what were you really responsible for relative to your role? If and is that okay if we talk about that?
Yeah, yeah, that's fine. My background, I actually came out of after high school. I came in through the skilled trades route. I didn't have money to go to school. I didn't know there were helping hands out there, and I went through the trades, apprenticeship as trades, and I had my hand in building Ford manufacturing, Chrysler, Subaru, Isuzu, and they're still around, Eli Lilly facilities, that sort of thing. So
Wow.
I saw a lot of what's going on, but by the time I got to Amazon, I was still in the reliability engineering maintenance space, and I hired into that department, which at the time, North America had about 35,000 people employed by Amazon just for that internal organization. Yeah, you might remember 2022, 2021 when the pandemic came around. Well, that's
Yeah.
where Amazon shared that with me that they're going to double the number of facilities from 500 to 1,000. So they're going to do in 12 months what it took them 25 years to build. And of course, with that, if they double the amount of fulfillment centers, that was specifically the big name for it.
Yeah.
Those warehouses that have all kinds of automation and humans in it that make sure your packages get to your door. They're going to double the employee base in effect. And it was December 14th. I got a call, said, "Hey, Derek, do you think we should train them?" I kind of smiled. I said, "Well, yeah, let's train them. That's a good idea." They said, "Well, make it happen." And the conversation was so short. In my mind, I know I wasn't the first person they called to set up this training, right? And I said, "Well, when would you like this training to begin?" They said, "Well, it's December 14th. How about January 1st?" I said, "Of this
Jeez.
coming year?"
Yeah,
He
really.
said, "Yeah." So it turned out I bought 2 or 3 extra weeks. I think we officially started on January 18th or the 20th of 2022 with our first cohort. And we just built the program from the ground up in a very literal sense. We started off with a title slide and they said, all right, let's talk about it. And we would sit around the dinner table or the hotel and we would say, all right, what did we talk about today? Let's document it. And we definitely build it in an agile framework. It took us
Mm,
until May to get what I was accepted by myself as running the project of, hey, we now have a full training program. Now let's just continue to make it better. And that's
mm.
what we did. So that was my time at Amazon. And the big takeaway there is that you give the right people the right information at the right time, they'll do incredible things.
In your title was that you have on LinkedIn is program manager. I mean, I would say miracle worker. I mean, you're talking to a man that's attended a significant amount of training, franchise sales with IHG, or even when I was out of college, beginning to work for resorts and et cetera. Yeah, you can give them a phone and a desk and say make calls, but what you did was significantly. I've never heard of anything like that. You used the phrase "tap me on the shoulder," and Sam, a guest on my show, said she used it like 3 or 4 times during her conversation, and I hadn't heard that in a long time. And it's a really cool thing because to me, as I shared with Sam, they're tapping you on the shoulder, typically from behind, and say, "Hey, Derek, do you have a minute?" Or "Hey, Craig," or "Hey, Steve, do you have a minute? We want to ask you to do something different than what you're doing now." Or somebody from another organization taps you on the shoulder and says, "We've been watching you and we'd like for you to come over here." So congrats. I mean, I can't say how cool that must have been and scary at the same time back when. Do you remember how you were feeling that when they said, "Hey, Derek, we want you to do this"?
Well, I don't know if it's rose-colored glasses looking backwards, Greg, but I don't remember fear. I
Mm,
remember the challenge, and my mind. It was actually just about 6 months before this time. While I was at Amazon, I was late diagnosed autistic, ADHD, and dyslexic. So I think that ADHD kicks in, which is um, attention deficit, but also hyper focus is there.
mm,
So when I see a problem or I see a project, my mind always goes into, well, maybe not always, but in this case, it went into hyper focus mode. And I don't think I had time to be scared. I'm sure looking back, I should have been because it was a lot of weight. But at the time, the this department was pretty much it was the Wild West. There was not a lot of training going on, especially at this level and at this scale.
sure.
And our department, our leadership training department, was still small, so it allowed me to have almost literally no boundaries. It's just, Derek, get it done. And at the
Mm,
time, I didn't say this earlier, but at the time, 82% attrition in this internal organization, which attrition, that means for every 100 people that we hired, Amazon, we would lose 82 of them within a 12-month span.
wow.
And that's cost some
That's
money.
yeah.
And it doesn't make people happy either because, whatever that leftover 18% are, they're seeing people drop like flies all around them. So now they know that their days are probably numbered as well. And we dropped within, I think that first period we measured 10 months in, we dropped from 32% attrition down to 30
Wow.
range attrition, which is just a great turnaround. And truly, I owe it all to Kim Chavez, who put me into position to be successful. And when I needed a tool, a resource, a human, she slotted it in. She never even questioned it. And it was that partnership that really helped me help make that program productive, because without the support of those around me, I would have just been spinning my wheels.
Amen. Again, just an incredible feat. And then at some point you decided that you wanted to go on and create something else. Tell us what you're doing now. And if it's comfortable for you, what was the transition out of Amazon, which is a huge company? By the way, before we go, I've got to ask, how does somebody order something at 8 a.m. and it arrives on their doorstep between 3 and 5? You got to admit that's pretty incredible.
It's computers, databases, and automatic scheduling. And routing. Routing is a big part of it. If something's not in a local warehouse, because odds are right now there's warehouses within 5 miles of you and anybody listening. And that doesn't mean that they're going to carry everything that you need,
Right.
but there's another warehouse 15 miles away and 30 and 45. And I think you give credit to companies like UPS and FedEx and DHL that pioneered logistics.
Yeah.
And what Amazon does, Amazon gets a hold of it like a dog with a bone, like a junkyard dog with a bone, it was put to me. They not only adapt to what is successful, but they magnify and exploit those positives to the nth degree to make it that much better. And that's what they do. It's just taking what's already been done and making it better.
Interesting. Well, I appreciate your candor and your kind words about Amazon. And again, back to my next question is you've decided to create an opportunity for yourself, I'm assuming, and you can tell us all about it. And so tell us the name, tell us what was in your head and your heart when you decided to leave Amazon and start what you're doing now. And please tell us all about it.
Well, I'll share that I didn't have what I'm working on now in my mind when I left Amazon. I shared that Amazon was the Wild West, which is great for somebody with ADHD because it's just, bells and whistles and signals and rebounds. And when it got to the point where my program was successful year after year, it became an administrative, just kind of like sit and wait, make sure the trains run on time. I'm not building train track anymore. And so the challenge was gone. And
Gotcha.
anybody that's successful at Amazon, they're there for the challenge. It's not the money, it's not the people, it's there for the challenge. And the average tenure at Amazon is like 5 or 6 years for somebody that's deep. But usually about 90% of the people are gone within 4 years, just because Amazon is just a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility. So I left Amazon on my own accord, and I was within that next 12-month time. I keep my ear to the ground. There's this AI thing going on, and I connect two things. And I'm thinking this AI thing, I can build what I did at Amazon. And at Amazon, let's say it took me a year and probably a couple hundred people involved with man hours and people hours and feedback. And I'm thinking I can use AI to shorten that onboarding and create what I did at Amazon for individual businesses overnight using AI and using AI to put the right information in the right bucket and then deliver it to the right person.
Hmm.
So my takeaway from Amazon, I shared earlier, the right people having the right information can do extraordinary things. And I'm using AI to deliver that right information at the right time. And I'm looking at this from a position of not using AI to replace humans, but to amplify humans. Because there's 7 things that humans do better than anybody else and better than computers rather. But there's that one thing that computers do, and computers slash AI slash automation is grab information and deliver it when it needs to be and be specific. Our minds were never developed to remember pi out to 37 digits or more, right? Or to remember that part number on this production line, or to remember that legal document file. There's a rare gift that's like what, one in 10 or 100 million that people have this perfect memory, but that's not how we're built.
Yeah.
So I looked at AI and I'm thinking, what's the practical way we can do this? So, hey, company name, Practical AI. Let's just do practical things that actually work.
Brilliant.
And then the interface is the big difference. The interface with AI, it's not about copying and pasting in chat because that never enters the human consciousness. The most important thing that I do is use a voice interface. So just like you and I are talking, if you share information with me, even if I'm just copying it down on paper, it still has to go through my brain and I have to process it. So
Right.
I'm involved. So all the AI that I work with is works with the human, like a soundboard rather than an answer giver. My professional product is Pocket Mentor because you can pull out your phone, dial a phone number, or tap a button through the web, VoIP call, and you're actually talking to AI that is trained on a single knowledge base. And that's what keeps it accurate. There's no added infrastructure, no new tablets to buy, no new servers to buy, no new security programs to enforce. And it just fits right in. So the philosophy behind all this, what really got me to building the product this way, I call it human first AI. And I wrote a book that came out earlier this year. It walks through in a human fashion, kind of take you by the hand, and through stories, it says, we're at a fork in the road. There's those that believe that AI is going to replace humans, and it's created this polarization. People are scared, and then businesses, they're just throwing money. Even though what was it? Was it the MIT research paper last year that identified that 95% of all corporate slash enterprise AI investment was a loss? There was only 5% that actually had a positive ROI, and that's
Yeah,
because they're trying to
interesting.
take humans out of the loop. And so
Well,
there's a
do
big
you,
cascade effect with that.
yeah, let me just say, do you believe the fear of X amount of humans is relative to their knowledge base of what AI is really here to do? And the fear is they're replacing me. So I'm sure you've spoken to people, other human beings, and have, I don't want nothing to do with AI, or I'm afraid of AI, or I don't want to be replaced. You've had those conversations?
Yeah, quite often. And if we look back in time, as humans, we only remember what happened the last 24 hours, to be honest, right? We have to study to go back any further. And anything more than 10 years ago, it's like, well, it's not really pertinent to what we're doing today. But if we look back, there's when the internet came around,
Hmm.
and it became, I think, consumer accessible in 1989, but it took 17 years of a lot of this. Oh, and the internet's bad, right? The
Yeah,
internet's good, the internet's bad, this polarization. It took until about, what was it, 2006 or so, when everybody in the world had access to the internet through a phone and through experience.
yeah,
In leadership, we call it what? Change management, right? If
right.
we just educate the users far enough in advance, then they can on ramp and they can understand it and they're not scared. But right now, we're only in what, our fourth year of this consumer AI point. So
Right.
if we reflect that or mirror it against the internet, rock when it got dropped in the lake and those ripples are flowing out, it's like it's only like 1993.
Right.
So that being said, all this change is going to happen whether we like it or not.
Yeah.
I'm not here to say that AI is good or bad. I'm not trying to influence people to use AI, but with human first AI, my book walks through, well, what if? What if we didn't have AI, and what if we did? And if it's used effectively, how would that turn out? And it's about educating the people that use AI, whether it's from the employee or the employer side or from individual use cases.
I
And
love
if the
I,
knowledge is there, people can make the decision themselves.
I love the question, what if? And to me, that screams curiosity. And if you know anything about me, then two of my favorite words relative to leadership is be curious or have curiosity. And the other one is empathy. Where is the other person coming from? And do you care? Want to know where the other person's coming from? Then yeah, empathy is important. But I love your question about what if. And I also like your phrase on ramping, because everybody that drives can understand that you're driving down a road going 25, maybe 45. All of a sudden, you're on an on ramp and you're going to be going 55 or 65. And I don't know, do you use that phrase on ramping often, or is it just something that came up as you and I were communicating? Because it's brilliant.
Well, I don't use it every day, but it was the term I used while at Amazon because, and it's used in every company that's out there. Let's on ramp the employee, or I guess more effectively, they say on board
Board.
the
Yeah.
employee.
Yeah. But onboarding, and then, let's see if how fast this person can ramp up. So you kind of combine the two. No, I love it. Love it. And you're also very easy to listen to, Derek. You very believable. And I'm not saying that I have guests that aren't, but you're not selling anything. We're communicating here, and you're adding value to people who maybe haven't thought about AI as a tool, then is safe, and you get out of it what you put in. And by the way, have you studied AI? Do we actually educate ourselves, or do we just look on Facebook and agree with other, I don't want to say ignorant, but people who aren't educated on AI and just say, yeah, me too, I'm afraid, and they're going to replace me. Now, those victims, as I just described without using the victim word, they're probably not interested in being more powerful and more helpful and more valuable to other human beings. And we'll just leave that comment as it should on its own. So, what do you recommend other than buy your book, listen or read it, understand it? But give us a couple tips that you believe that we can hear from this podcast and immediately employ, if you will, in our lives so we can be more aware and we can have more value from any AI tool.
Well, I will say that from a microeconomic standpoint, there's going to be humans that are displaced. They're going to outright lose their jobs, and it's not going to change. It's been that way generation after generation.
Amen.
We only have to look back to I don't know, let's say the agricultural revolution. 150 years ago, I think it was, it
Yeah.
took one family to produce enough food for two families. So, throw some math out there. That means half of all people are farmers. I don't know about you, Greg. I like air conditioning. I like being inside. I'm okay that they found a way to increase efficiency. So I'm
Absolutely.
okay. But what that did, it allowed me to come inside. And that agricultural revolution really is what helped jumpstart the industrial revolution. Henry Ford came around and said, "Hey, how can we put these people to work?" And now we had the industrial revolution started, and he started building cars that were very affordable that every John, Joe, and Jane and Janet could buy. And so that allowed humans overall to live at a higher quality of life. Now,
Yeah.
the individuals, right? There were some farmers that lost their jobs, and then but they were able to move to another job. So if we look to today, yeah, there's some jobs out there that AI is going to displace directly. Um, but industrial revolution, agricultural revolution, those are two examples. The AT&T, Ma Bell, when they automated operators,
Yeah.
that was a big thing back in the day. It was
No
huge,
doubt.
just like
Yeah.
this AI is today. But they found out that those operators that were displaced. I listened to an NPR two-part summary or a two-part report on that storyline. They said it was mostly women, but the employees that were replaced by the automation, the computer connections, ended up getting a higher quality of life, better jobs, and more money than if they just would have stayed where they were at. Now, were they displaced? Yes. Did everybody get a higher job? No.
No.
Nothing's 100%. But if we take statistics, that's what we have to go by. The majority were better afterwards, and
Yeah.
it's neat. I just heard a story about the Iceman. Back before we could produce ice locally, there was a guy that they referred to as the Iceman who pulled it out of the poles and shipped it all over the world. So he put people to work. So here's where
Hmm.
there's a blip for, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years where there were ice workers that suddenly never cut ice. Now they were cutting ice. They had jobs, they fed their families. But as soon as somebody invented how to make ice, well, then those workers had nothing to do and they had to find something else, another
Right.
role, another career. So microeconomically, yeah, there's going to be a blip, and I feel sorry for everybody that's out there. But the neat thing about it is you can use AI to reskill, to
Yeah.
job train.
No, I agree. And I believe from a training standpoint, which is where this story started with you building training for a significant amount of people in a very short time. Here we are circling back to what your tool really does for people. So, what would you say is the number one value that your human AI, your practical human first AI is doing for people? What would you say the number one value is?
It amplifies the workers that we have in businesses across the world. It's humans that made these businesses top of the world. Fortune 100, Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, NASDAQ, all these that are ranked. If it wasn't for humans, those companies wouldn't have made it there. And if we rely on automation, it does increase bottom line, it does increase profit, but to a limit. And
Hmm.
let's say we throw a limit out there of maybe, let's say, 12 to 18 months, that company becomes brittle because while it can run along fine for 12 to 18 months, when you get to those decisions where, well, just the term decision, when you need a human to make a judgment call,
Yep.
AI, by definition, works inside a box. But unfortunately, life works outside the box, and that's where the humans are valuable. And if we work on AI only, automation only, those companies get brittle and they will break. So when we
Yeah.
amplify the human, we can actually relieve them so they're doing a lot less of the manual, of the intensive, of the boredom work. Let AI handle that, and then put those humans to work their brain. That's really why we hire humans, is for their brain, it's for their decision making, their reasoning power. And if you have a human that is supported by AI, they can, the term 10x production is thrown around right
Hmm.
belligerently out there. But if you have AI supporting the humans and you're not replacing the humans, those humans will be a 10x multiplier because now they can think about the job and they can think about making better rather than looking back to that job list or that task list that they're 6 months behind on, just trying to catch up.
Well, you amplify decisions. It's they can't it AI can't think of what it is we want to do, but well, you might argue that they they can't they can't do things humans can do, but they can certainly amplify what humans are doing. And I am, as a sole entrepreneur, I've fallen in love with, I want to say something to somebody, and I want my voice to be in it. So I create it, I run it through AI, and it sometimes it gives me one version, sometimes it gives me three versions. It almost knows if I need an additional version. But unequivocally, it comes back with better grammar, shortened conversation, and to the point. And as a leadership coach, a lot of people don't really need the sappy, long-winded stuff. They need to say, when do I start? How much does it cost? And what value will I receive from hiring you, Greg? And so I put it in those terms, and my proposals have been significantly different. And so I'm a fan. I can't really tell you which one I use all the time because it doesn't really matter, but I'm comfortable because it's not replacing me. It's making me more valuable to the people I say I really want to work with. And so what do you say to the entrepreneur who will not be replaced because if they replace themselves and they fire themselves, they're kind of not very intelligent. But what do you say to the entrepreneur or those little companies? How do they get the best out of what you do? Or
Well,
is it or is it any different?
I think you said it well. You use AI to make you better. And if we look back at one other industrialization, if we look back at electricity we look at today as a commodity, right? We don't care who it comes from as
Hmm.
long as we, when we plug in our TV into the wall, that there's power there to turn it on. And there's lots of after the fact judgment on how the electricity is produced. But for the majority, we just want to make sure that the lights are on, the air conditioning is on, et cetera. So if we look back 100, 130 years or so when electricity was being industrialized, commercialized, you would go into a grocery store, and if that grocery store without electricity functioned as a grocery store, and then you added electricity, now calling companies today an AI company would be akin to calling that grocery store an electric company.
Hmm.
AI today is nothing more than a commodity. It doesn't matter who produces it, right? There's different flavors, right? There's,
Right.
but electricities, we got 50 hertz or 60 hertz, but it all aligns. Even Canada, who is on 50 hertz instead of 60 hertz electricity for so long, they align to 60 hertz at a certain point. And we're
Hmm.
going to do the same thing with AI. AI is just a public utility. Now, I loose words, don't hold me, well, it's the public, you got to pay for it. But we pay for electricity, pay for water, natural gas, propane. AI is that it's the newest commodity, and that's it. It makes what we're doing better, faster, more repetitive, so we can break things faster. You really want to know what AI does? It allows you to break things faster, so you can scoop out the positive results that actually work.
Yeah. It's been a neat addition. I'll just say that. I enjoy it. I love how my son, 15, just turned 15, uses it. He literally talks to his phone and tells her the problem, and the problem is solved. But it's not, he can't, AI can't jump out of the phone and fix it for him. But what he does though is he hears it and then he listens to it again, and then he figures out on something else, a gaming station or yardage or whatever, and it shares exactly how he could. There's no way he could do it. Well, he because we don't use encyclopedias, and encyclopedias, once they're written, they're written. And this is what I love about this tool. It's evolving with at the speed of life or the speed of light, whatever you want to call it. And as we grow and we learn things, it learns it and then it shares it with us. And in my opinion, Derek, do you want to become more intelligent or not? And I believe if you do, this is one opportunity. Can you read books? Yes. But again, those books were written at some point before now. And a lot has happened from that point to now. AI is as current as you can possibly, get it. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I also would love you to leave us with this. What's one thing that people should do, or you recommend they could do if they wanted to be safe and use AI for what it's really meant for?
Well, to be safe, I think that my version of safe, your version of safe, listeners' version of safe are all separate. So, number one is define what makes you feel safe.
Hmm.
And then write that's your line in the sand. Maybe you identify what that means. Like, I will share where I went to school, but I won't give my social security number type of information.
Yeah, I
And
got
then once you define what makes you feel safe, use that information and get you a $20 subscription to any of the commercial frontier AIs out there and just try to break it, try to soundboard, try to come up with a novel, try to invent 4 dimensions or 12 dimensions, just talk to it. And I really do preach the voice over typing because it makes our
Yes.
brain work better.
Yeah.
So that would be it. Just get your own experience yourself. Don't rely on headlines. Don't rely on scare tactics. Don't rely on propaganda. Don't rely on commercials. Just
Yeah.
use AI for anything that you want to use it for with your predefined knowledge limit that you want to share and just see what happens.
Great advice. I appreciate it. Derek, really have enjoyed this conversation. Phenomenal background. And I loved what you said about ADHD because a lot of people, it's different today, but let's just be honest, 5, 6, 7 years ago, that was, oh, you must be weird. You must be different. You must need medication. Hell yeah, I need medication because without it, I can't regulate. Yeah, some of the most famous people or most brilliant people in the world have had medication. And guess what? Okay, what else do you want to talk about? what's their value to the world? What's their value to society? And more importantly, how valuable are they to the people they say they know and love, their family, their customers, their coworkers? And if they're kind and considerate and brilliant, great. If they're a little different, what does different mean these days? I just focus on how kind can you be? How empathetic can you be? How creative can you be? And how curious are you? Because if you're really curious, we won't be judging people. And that's probably a whole nother podcast. But again, I just wanted to say thank you for uh, saying what you said about ADHD because I believe there's a lot of people that could really benefit from the medicine that they don't even know they need. So anyway,
Well, one closing comment since we the ADHD flag is in the air. I think having AI as a communications partner, somebody that is as brilliant as the user, whatever level that is, it's a way to satisfy that ADHD thirst without medication, without other treatment, because it's
hmm,
that part where our brain is just running 100 miles an hour and we jump around. We sound weird to people because we're talking about clouds. Next time we're talking about DNA, nucleus, and tadpoles in the third minute later, and people don't know how the connection we connect it in our mind, but we do it so fast, we look like and we become outcast. Now you get you whether it's just Chat GPT or you get a custom tool like Pocket Mentor, and you can have a conversation 24/7, 365.
hmm,
And it allows us to release knowledge and to experiment and to have some theoretical physics or theoretical math or just somebody to talk to that can change topics so fast. AI has, I think it's a great equalizer for those of
yeah.
us that are neurodivergent. It allows us to communicate in a 1v1 scenario instead of trying to fit into the old school one size fits all scenario.
Amen. Well said. And again, you're right. The flag's up. Let's talk about it. So again, Derek, thank you so much for being my guest. Thanks for reaching out and recommending that we do this. And any last parting words you'd like to share before we say goodbye?
Just want to thank you and your listeners for the time. It's my privilege to be here.
Yeah, both of them are going to love this. No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. And again, thank you. Have a great day, and we'll see you on the other side. I have to admit, I was surprised by how much I really enjoyed talking to this gentleman. When I saw AI and Amazon, I thought this could be a boring conversation, but it was anything but boring. It was fantastic. It was impactful to a point where I'm now rethinking on how I use AI. And I'm not going to sell AI. I'm not going to say that's what you need to do because everyone has their divergent decisions or divergent beliefs, I should say, in what AI means to them and or how they allow their kids to use AI, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, you cannot argue with it has helped us think differently. And if differently for you means better, great. If it means it helps you in some way, great. But again, as you look back over the years, and as he said it in his the revolutions we've been through and how we've had to change. Yes, people have lost jobs, but guess what? People are going to lose jobs no whether we have AI or not. Are you allowing them to replace you? Are you using it so you don't get replaced? That might be a question you ask yourself. So I hope you had enjoyed the conversation with Derek as much as I did interviewing him. But again, I want to give thanks to my sponsor, InterraWorks. If you haven't heard about them, you need to. Two of their products are Effective Edge and Best Year Yet. Best Year Yet's been around almost 40 years. They now have an app. It can be in your hand. If you want the best year yet, you can start with having the best day and the best week and the best month yet.